Hi, and welcome to Cover Brand, where we cover all things branding, marketing, and advertising to help you understand what the hell branding is and how it works to grow your business. Welcome, and welcome back to Cover Brand. I'm Ethan Decker, your host, and today I have John Pabon. John Pabon. That's the one thing I did forget to ask you. How do you pronounce your name, sir?
It's Pabon, but I am not particular, so you can butcher it any way you want.
John Pabon. P-A-B-O-N.
It's Creole for troublemaker.
Oh, it is.
No word
okay.
of a lie. Yeah.
A Creole name. Pabon.
Yeah.
A little bit of French, a little patois.
That's it.
Okay. So it's like Paris and Paris, right?
Exactly.
The Southerners will call it John Pabon.
Which is probably why I'm not particular, because it gets pronounced every which way. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture.
John, we will talk a lot more about who you are and what you're into right after a few things. But the first thing we got to talk about is cover songs. So tell me, what cover song did you bring to the show?
Yeah, so one of my favorite songs is Led Zeppelin's "Stairway to Heaven." I mean, classic. You know, you can't beat it. Perfectly orchestrated, just amazing piece. But I don't know how it happened. Maybe it was my Spotify playlist accidentally brought it up. But I didn't know Heart did a cover song, and Heart is probably one of my favorite bands. My mom loved them, which sort of turned me on to them, which kind of ages me, I guess. But that's fine. They did a cover of "Stairway to Heaven" when Led Zeppelin was inducted. I think it was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Kennedy Center honors. One of them.
I think it was Kennedy Center.
I think so too. Yeah, it was, because they had the big medals around their necks. So amazing cover song and amazing rendition of "Stairway to Heaven."
You know, you're right. And who would have the audacity besides a white male guitar singer songwriter balladeer to think they could cover "Stairway to Heaven"? You know,
in front of Led Zeppelin,
in front of the band themselves. But Heart might be one of the only bands that really could do that justice. And Heart is a hell of a rock and roll band.
Absolutely. And they did do it justice. I think they extended it by a few minutes too, which is saying something.
They just kept going?
They just kept going. Yeah. And it's already a long song to begin with.
That's great. I can't imagine how much more successful Heart would be if they weren't in the midst of the, late 60s, early 70s and 80s with all of the sexism in the industry. Well, I don't know that it's gotten any better. A lot of the female artists keep saying it's not gotten any better.
I don't think it has, but that they had any success at all is pretty telling, especially during that time. Yeah.
But Heart rips. And so "Stairway to Heaven," the cover by Heart, we'll make sure to add it to the Cover Brand cover song playlist on Spotify. So you can hear all of the cover songs that have been brought onto the show. Super fun.
That's amazing.
That's great. That's a great, great, great cover. And you know what? I got to say, John, it's rare to find a cover that is in the same zone and genre and vibe as the original, but still does great. Still is a great song.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think Kim Petras did a cover of Kate Bush's "Running Up That Hill," and that was sort of the only one where, like you just mentioned, it's sort of the same sort of vibe and tone. They didn't put their spin on it too much, which is kind of what you want in a cover, at least for me. I know a lot of people want something drastically different, but I don't want it to stray too far afield.
No, but I think a piece of the puzzle that I've talked about with guests is that a good cover song, you really make it yours. But Heart is a hard driving rock and roll band. So to make it theirs, they're playing hard driving rock and roll, which is a lot like Led Zeppelin.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, we'll be right back after these messages with more from John Pabon. Cover Brand is supported by Segmentation Eau de Toilette, the new fragrance for those who slice up their market. It has beautiful high notes of occasions with just a hint of demographics. Segmentation Eau de Toilette. Show the world you have focus. And we're back. So now that we've covered the cover songs, let's cover some cover brands. Let's cover some brand stuff. John, today I'm excited. We're going to have a special episode of Shop Talk where I get to talk to other practitioners, other mechanics of the marketing arts. And we get to talk about the mechanisms and machinations of marketing. So let's give people a sense of what you've done, your role in the industry, and certainly your new book.
Absolutely. So the dark arts of marketing. My background is in sort of public policy marketing. So started off at the UN, went into the evil world of consulting with McKinsey and AC Nielsen, BSR, who's sort of the McKinsey of the sustainability world. But my focus, essentially for the past decade plus, has been primarily on sustainability strategic communications. What's sustainability? It's a big, broad thing, but I'm sort of classifying that as an umbrella term for anything that helps society or the planet. And I'm not a greenie. I don't go hang off the side of a whaling ship, but I approach sustainability very much from a dollars and cents business perspective. So I have been in that space, like I said, about a decade plus, helping large businesses, small businesses, governments, individuals as well, figure out, okay, how do I talk about this stuff in a meaningful way, in a transparent way that is not greenwashing, which is wrapping themselves in the language of sustainability when it's not true, and really trying to take that pragmatic, altruistic approach to saving the planet and society.
So just to be clear, you're not the one going in saying, here's how you can save 5 million gallons of water a month. You're saying, how do we communicate or talk about the fact that we now can save 5 million gallons of water a month because we've figured out how to recycle the hot water into our system?
There's a bit of strategy behind it, so how it fits into the grand scheme of a business's operation, sure, but I'm not going in and dictating what a company will or won't do. That's basically on them. And I don't do the environmental science side of things. I frankly find it really, really boring. And there's plenty of scientists that do that stuff. So I'm on the I'm on the equally boring governance side, is what we call it, the G of ESG.
Is it boring to you, though?
No, not at all. I find it absolutely fascinating. So I think it's the same thing with the scientists. They find it fascinating. I find it tedious.
One man's trash is another person's treasure.
That's exactly right.
Right? No. Play to your strengths. Play to what interests you. And what interests you is the communication side, the governance side, the expression side of it.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of work in that space.
Okay. So what's an example of a project you have worked on that you can share and talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty open. I think my favorite one to talk about, and I've talked about it quite a bit actually, was with Walmart. Yes, Satan incarnate. But with their work in China. So I spent a decade working and living in China, in and out of more factories than I care to remember. But yeah, Walmart's an awful company in a lot of ways, but they're doing a lot of great things with their supply chain, particularly their suppliers and factories in China, where they've gone in and they've said, okay, we need to essentially go in and help our workers not just do better on the line and be more productive, but how can we do that while also helping them with their communication skills, financial literacy, family planning. And the example that we sort of went into these middle managers and we explained to them, we said, hey, and a little bit of a trigger warning for anybody listening. If your female workers are out having an abortion, because that's considered a form of contraception in China, they are probably not showing back up to work. There's going to be high absenteeism. They are not going to be really engaged with the work that they're doing, so lower productivity. How can you turn that on its head? How can you bring a bit of education into what's happening on the line so that people know there are other options? They show back up, lower absenteeism, higher productivity, and the factory makes more money while also doing a great thing, not just for a few women here and there. We're talking, I think over the course of the 3-year program, almost 500,000 women went through this program. Of education. So massive things at scale. So, and that's that balancing act, right? Where you have an awful company like Walmart, but also doing good things in another part of their work.
So just to backtrack on the story itself, what you're saying is that there was reproductive education,
Correct.
sex ed. And
doesn't exist in China.
Okay, sex ed does not exist in China. So the fact that Walmart wants, they might be doing it so that they have a more productive factory and more productive workers and more engaged workers. But they decided a route to that is, let's bring sex ed to China. Let's teach these women sex ed. Do they teach the men as well?
They do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So all employees get sex ed, and then they learn about things like contraception and fertility and the birds and the bees.
That's it.
And that helps them avoid things like unwanted pregnancies, which helps them avoid things like unwanted abortions.
Exactly right. And so had we gone in as consultants to, Walmart's middle managers who have lots of P&L they need to meet in KPIs, and we said, hey, you have female workers, do good things for them, they would have laughed us out of the room. But you approach it with a much more pragmatic viewpoint of, hey, you're losing productivity in dollars because X, Y, and Z is happening. they start listening. And I know that sounds a little distasteful when you hear it for the first time, but that's really my take on how we're going to push the needle in the right direction is it has to make business sense or nobody's going to be listening to you.
Yeah. Well, there are quite a few things to discuss about this, which I love. Quite a few. One of them, though, is this point of getting things into the language that people understand. And that's certainly the case here for you when you're dealing with policies about human health and wellness, environmental protection, sustainability, all those things. Some people don't give a damn about those things. They care about, like you said, P&Ls, profit and loss statements, margins, quarterly earnings. And so if you can frame those same things up in that language, you get support, right?
Absolutely. And everything at the end of the day, this sounds trite, but everything is sustainability now in the business world. You can't really get away from it. So if given the need or the challenge, I could relate any part of a business to sustainability somehow. But like you said, it's about fixing that language so people listen. It's not approaching it with, hey, hug the trees and save the polar bears. It's, this is actually going to impact your business in a negative way if you don't do it.
Right. Well, that's true. There's the positive side of, let's say in this case, more engaged workers, less absenteeism,
higher productivity
on the line. And then there's the negative side, which is if you're killing off polar bears because you're polluting Alaska or something like that, then you're going to have a backlash. You're going to have problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? There's
and
a risk.
There is, and you can't sell products on a dead planet. It sort of comes down to that.
So in this regard, what you're talking about a lot is communicating sustainability things inside of a company.
Both inside and outside. So that's an internal example. But if you're communicating it to the general public, how do you do it in a way that A, brings the public along on the journey with you is a really important thing that companies tend not to do. How do you do it in a way that's genuine to your business, but also doesn't lie to a consumer? Companies love to lie and pretend like we're dumb when we're not. And at the end of the day, what I always tell people, companies and audiences is, and this always gets pearls clutched and I don't understand why, is nobody expects you to be perfect as a business. Just don't lie. And they look at you like you've just stolen their firstborn child or something, but it's not that. It shouldn't be that foreign of a concept. Just don't lie to consumers. Yeah, it's amazing.
Because they're so used to lying and they feel it's so valuable, or what?
It's a combination of that. So they think that they've been able to get away with lying so long that it's just sort of how things are done, standard operating procedure.
Right.
It requires them to be actually transparent, not just give it lip service, which means putting the good and bad out, which is fine. But that's the part that they really get stuck with is, well, I can't tell you everything because if I do, then people are going to find out I'm not perfect. But
Perfect.
Who thinks you're perfect? I mean, PepsiCo, honestly, nobody thinks you're perfect.
I know. Okay. That's another great point, which is when it comes to brand image, brands almost universally just want to show the positive.
Yep.
Just like the song, right? Accentuate the positive. And they are allergic and paranoid about anything negative because of the risk implications.
Absolutely.
And if they admit anything negative, there's probably a risk, or they're worried about the risk of exposure to liability or whatever if they have admitted any kind of negative thing.
And maybe 10 years ago you can get away with that, but with the access to information now, if you don't say the negative or even the not so positive stuff, somebody's going to find out. If all you present is the perfect image of your business, people are going to take that as suspect and start doing a little bit of digging. So
Sure.
Radical transparency, put all those cards on the table. People can't find something wrong because you've already gotten ahead of it. But God forbid anybody actually does that.
So that's funny. I've got one example I know of where a company does this. It's in the United States. It's pretty well known in marketing circles, at least, that they do this kind of thing. I think most consumers still have no clue about this stuff because really they just see them as they make puffy coats. But the brand is Patagonia. And in marketing, again, they're well known to be environmental and sustainable and trying to do the right thing by the planet. And they lead with the headline very often, everything we make pollutes. Yep. That's the first thing they say. And then they hit you with all the ways that they pollute, the ways that they're using petrochemicals, all of their nylons and synthetics and hollow fill and fibers. And then they finally do come back to, and this is what we're doing about it. Mm-hmm. And this is how we're trying to change it. And this is how we're trying to change the world. But I'm in Boulder, and we have about 19 outdoor stores on Pearl Street in a 10-block stretch. It is the Rodeo Drive of the outdoor world. And I'm convinced it's as much B2B. It's actually more B2B than it is B2C. It's not for consumers. It's for the industry to see, oh, you've got a zip code, right? You've got a shop in the 80302, which is downtown Boulder. So you go every single block, you're passing 2 or 3 outdoor shops. And Patagonia's got one of them. And literally on the windows, they have put those words, everything we make pollutes. And they lead with that. That refreshing honesty is something I love as a marketing approach because, to your point, people can find stuff out already. They know you're not perfect. Who the hell's squeaky clean anyway? Yep. And a little bit of honesty is, I call it refreshingly honest because it's refreshing. It's refreshing to have a company actually level with you.
Absolutely.
I know of a couple other marketing examples that are not just about sustainability. Do you know of any other examples of companies that are refreshingly honest?
So Patagonia is a great example. They're one of those poster children of the sustainability world. And it's funny you bring them up. It was the end of last year, the beginning of this year, they released, I want to say it was their first proper sustainability report. They'd never really waded in those waters before. And the cover page was, all we do is greenwashing. So the same thing as what you're saying they're putting on their posters. But the response, especially in the sustainability community, which I found amazing, was, why would you do that? Because all people are going to see is the headline and not read the actual report. So there was blowback, and I thought it was a great approach, but my colleagues didn't see it the same way. To your question, though, one of a really good example of a company sort of getting out in front, and this is I don't know if it's the company or if it's the founder of the company doing it. It's sort of a combo of both, but it's Atlassian, so the software company, run by Mike Cannon. I don't think I know them. Yeah, they're a major one. They're one of the big ones. They compete with the Adobes of the world. So they're Atlassian. They're Australian-run. Mike Cannon Brooks, a billionaire, runs the company. They have also become sort of one of the tech world's sustainability darlings for many, many years, but it would have been 2024, early 2025. They decided to buy the Williams F1 Racing Group. And everybody sort of scratched their heads and went, what? Why would you support such a thing when it goes counter to everything that you stand for as a business? Mike Cannon Brooks, the billionaire, which billionaires and sustainability don't go hand in hand either. He gets out in front and he says, well, we purchased the racing team because they're really pushing along the notion of sustainable F1 racing. And he explained sort of why. But then he went a next step and he said, and I know you guys have a problem with me having a private jet. This is why I have a private jet, because I'm using that as a test case for sustainable aviation fuels and transport and things like that.
Interesting.
So it's interesting when they do get out in front of these things and they explain the rationale. But I think a lot of times companies forget to explain the why, and that's when it gets them in trouble. If there's a reason for it, sure. If you can explain the why you're doing something that on the surface doesn't look great, maybe I can get behind you. But if I don't know you're doing it and why, I'm just going to not trust you. Yeah.
And as those colleagues said about Patagonia and people not reading below the headline, that's usually true. Very few people read below the headline. Like me neither. I don't read below I'm in advertising. I don't want to read all that crap. So it is normal. And it's universal for 98% of people not to read below the headline. And then maybe, it's actually 99.8%, and then 0.2% to get into the nitty gritty and read the details. So your headline better be damn good.
That's it.
And a lot of people have lost the art of the good headline. I hate to say it. Like, I look back at old Porsche ads and Volvo ads, and, there's some Guinness ads that are just frickin' fantastic.
Brilliant ads.
Because the headline says what you have to say. There's a great Porsche headline that was something like, if you went any faster, they'd have to serve you airline food.
It's brilliant. That's all you need to know.
Right. Or a very famous one, I think from either Rolls-Royce or Cadillac, that said, at 60 miles an hour, the loudest sound you hear is the ticking of the clock in the dashboard. You know, I mean, that talks about luxury and opulence and engineering and quiet.
All in a few words.
It's all in a few words, but the headline is clutch, and people have lost the ability to write a really good headline. But let's get back to this thing about refreshing honesty, because I love that you said a huge element, a huge thing that you push on clients about sustainability in particular is just say the truth and get in front of it. Stop lying, stop trying to lie, to obfuscate. And there are a couple other examples of fairly famous brands that did that, not in greenwashing, or in the case of sustainability. One of them is Avis Classic Campaign. They were the number 2 brand. And they just said, yeah, we're the number 2 brand, which means we try harder. Another one, there's a cough syrup from Canada called Buckley's. And they have this great campaign. I think it needs refreshing, it needs enlivening, but the campaign has great bones, and the campaign is tastes terrible, and that's why it works. And so they've got lines like, you will swear by it and at it. I mean, you know, come on. And so that notion of getting out in front of the negative and admitting the negative, and then using that as part of this refreshing way to get attention.
Absolutely.
Right?
And if you think about, like, if you're working at an agency, don't you want to do a bit more creative work than just taking the stock standard, what the brief brings in, what the client tells you to do, and just accentuate the positive stuff? Be interesting. Like, think a little bit further, stretch your brain a bit, and come up with something that it could be award-winning and stand the test of time. Who knows? For
sure. Well, okay, you're probably preaching to the choir when you're talking to agency people.
Sure.
So let's talk about client side. When you do talk to maybe the Walmarts or maybe not the Walmarts, but any kind of client, and I've got my stories, but let me hear your stories about helping clients understand that being direct, being blunt, getting in front of it has less risk than they think and more upside than they think. Are there strategies or tactics you have to get them into that right mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. And these are sort of stock standard consulting world strategies that a lot of times people just forget to do. And any time I'll engage with a client, I always tell them, okay, you have this universe of things you could be doing, you could be addressing, especially when it relates to sustainability. You can talk about anything you want. And a lot of times what happens is they get overwhelmed and they think, oh my God, if I don't do all of it, then I shouldn't do any of it. So I tell them, no. Just figure out what it is that's most material. What do your stakeholders care about internally and externally? And just focus on those 2 or 3 things. You don't need to do everything. You can't do everything. And that then gets them into the mindset of, okay, I can actually connect what's good for the planet and society with what's good for my stakeholders, with what's good for my business. And that gets them in that mindset of thinking, okay, I can actually do something and I can move the needle forward. So it's about compartmentalizing. And I think it's the same for anybody who wants to be an altruist, right? I care about things. I go outside. I want to, give money to every homeless person, adopt every dog, and then go read to the elderly on the weekends. Give me a break. Like, I can't do that. Nobody can do everything. So you really do have to nobody can. So you really do have to compartmentalize.
I want to dig deeper into the sense of to get a client to say then a negative. How do you work with clients to get them to admit to the tarnished part, to admit, like, here's an example, right? We have just eliminated certain forever chemicals from our production process. However, we know that we still pollute X, Y, and Z with the resources that we use. Yep. So how do you talked about the pearl clutching. That's the normal reaction when you tell people, don't lie, just tell them the truth. Mm-hmm. What are some ways you have to actually connect and resonate and get through to these clients about saying the negative?
Yeah, so it really does come down to what I would just call benchmarking, right? If you don't know the negative things that are going on in your business because you're not talking about them internally or externally, how are you ever going to fix them? And so you explain to them, like we were talking with the Walmart example, what the drain is on the business if you don't have a baseline for your scientific jargon warning, your water effluents, how are you ever going to improve them? So you're taking money out of the coffers of the bottom line. So you always approach it from, like we talked about at the beginning, their language, how it's negatively impacting their business. And that 9 times out of 10, once they actually see the negative impact of not communicating, they then realize, oh my God, by communicating, I can actually improve things. And if I communicate, sort of to put all the cards on the table, communicate everything, intrinsically, I know they're also thinking, well, if I throw it all at the audience, they're not going to be able to splice and see everything. So just throw it out all at once. And that's what it happens in fits and starts. It happens where it takes forever to get them in the mindset. And all of a sudden, okay, give them everything, because I know they're not going to be able to digest it all. And for me, the ends justify the means. At least they got everything out. And I'll let the consumers and the audiences parse everything out and figure out all the bad stuff on their own.
So the piece in there, one piece I heard that I loved is that notion of what's the risk of each choice. And we often think of the cost of a thing to do. We don't always think of the either opportunity cost of what else to do or the cost of not doing. And in this case, the risk, right? Because these are risk-averse marketers. They're running huge companies. They've got big budgets. I get it. I hate asking clients to be brave. I think it's an asinine thing to ask anyone to do. People are brave or they're not. And if they're not brave, they're probably in upper management because they know how to cover their own ass and they know how to protect the company and they know how to mitigate risk. So you're dealing with a whole bunch of kind of risk-averse people. That's their job, is to say no. But to talk about the relative risks of saying only positive, saying positive and negative, saying nothing, right? All to show those different scenarios or choices, and then to talk about those different risks relative to each other, I think is pretty powerful.
Absolutely. And then you also have the comparison to what their peers are doing, right? If you're lucky enough to be talking to someone in a segment where their peers are actually doing anything, you can say, hey, they're leapfrogging you here, so you need to catch up. You're already well behind. You're a dinosaur. That starts to get them thinking as well, but I think that's secondary to what's happening internally to a business, because they sort of think they're infallible and they're going to be around forever. But honestly, if companies at this stage of the game aren't not even just considering sustainability, but if it's not actually built into the marketing jargon DNA of their business, there's not going to be a place for them 5 or 10 years down the line. I think they're already dinosaurs.
So John, your book is about greenwashing, right?
So I have a few books. The first is more of a, I know. I'm disgusting like that. So the first is...
No, you're productive like that. I'm jealous like this. You're productive like that.
Once you're on the hamster wheel, you can't get off. So the first book was more a practical guide for everyday people of what to do to be more sustainable. It's called Sustainability for the Rest of Us, your no bullshit 5-point plan for saving the planet.
Nice.
Second book is the greenwashing book. So that's called The Great Greenwashing, How Brands, Governments, and Influencers Are Lying to You. And that does look specifically at greenwashing. I thought it would be originally just the corporate private sector, but as I'm peeling back the onion, I'm going, oh my God, it's everywhere. It's governments, it's international organizations, it's obviously celebrities and the ultra wealthy, and we do it ourselves as well. So I really dissected all those things to give really good, I think it's really good, I just pat myself on the back, examples of sort of what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly across all of those different segments. And my most recent book, which is launching in the US next week, or the 28th of April, depending when you're listening to this, called Strategic Sustainability, a Pragmatic Blueprint for Responsible Business. That's my first business book. So it was a little bit of a different journey. I had to hold back on the profanity more than usual. My editor did not like the profanity that I usually use. So a little bit of a different voice, but that's particularly geared towards the executives of a business or those in a sustainability function. But there's plenty of stuff in there for normal everyday readers that don't necessarily work in the space, but want to nerd out on sustainability anyways.
Okay, so the first two were really for consumers, really for the general population. General population,
which is my writing style. I write like I talk, which I hope people find refreshing.
Yep. And so this third one is more B2B. It's really a guide for businesses.
Absolutely. So it's sort of, it's actually two main sections. The first is, and I don't know why nobody's done this before, it's actually a history of the modern sustainability movement from the 60s to today. Nobody's documented this. So I thought that made sense to do, because if it's not been documented. People in the business don't know the history. And so what's the adage? You're forced to repeat it, which we do a lot.
Right,
and then from there, I get into the practical strategies of, okay, if you know your history now, this is how to avoid repeating it, from procurement approaches to the future of green jobs to a massive section on, obviously, on comms and marketing.
Right. Well, tell me about that second book about the Great Greenwashing. You really frame it up as a big risk. Well, not just a big risk. First of all, a really big habit that everyone's doing it. Like you said, companies, countries, celebrities, neighbors, greenwashing, right? You buy the eco-friendly luggage and then you fly your jet somewhere, and your one flight eliminates all the carbon benefit from your eco-friendly luggage. But tell me about the risks of greenwashing to brands, because it seems like greenwashing tends to work. Like in the sense that, a lot of companies use it and use it well and use it successfully. But you're saying that there's a big downside and there's a big risk.
Absolutely. And it's because they invest so much money into doing it. The reality is they would rather invest millions into the market research around how to lie to you than actually improving their business to make it better for the planet and society, because, as we talked about, these companies don't see a benefit or a risk in what they're doing. But increasingly, with access to information, consumers are able to sniff this stuff out pretty easily. Like, these companies are not as slick as they think they are. Maybe 30 years ago we might have fallen for it, but come on. So your package is green, that means you're good? No, there's an inherent mistrust from consumers now, whereas maybe before there was brand loyalty. Now every product I look at, I just don't trust anything you're saying. So you better be good if you're going to try to lie to me. And they're not that smart, with the exception of a few really good ones, and they tend to be in those outlier industries that are, I would call them, the necessary evils of today, right? Oil, gas, mining, defense, like these things that we know are part of modern life. We're not getting rid of them anytime soon, but also, like, there's no way you can be a defense Raytheon can't say, oh, I have the most sustainable ballistic missile.
Right.
Like, you can't.
There's just no way.
It doesn't work that way. So if we put them to the side and we say, okay, you're never going to be sustainable. I don't trust anything you're saying, no matter how much money you're putting into this. Put them to the side. Every other company and segment that exists, you sort of look at it with a bit of trepidation and you go, okay, I don't exactly believe everything that you're saying. So these companies are having to either fall into line and stop lying, which luckily most of them are doing, or they're investing even more into the lies. And that's become a smaller and smaller subset of the communication world, which is a good thing.
You're really seeing, and let's look at, I like big trends. I don't like 2-year trends. I like 20-year trends or 40-year trends or 80-year trends. Over the course of the past 60 years, let's say, from the time of the original green revolution of agriculture, which was all chemicals and pesticides to boost crop yields and to get Wonder Bread on the shelf that would last for weeks. I mean, that was the original green revolution, to realizing that, I guess, spraying all these pesticides and chemicals isn't always great for the environment, isn't always great for you. Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring about the deadly damage of DDT on the environment. And now, more recently, you're saying that companies are under more scrutiny from people. People have more access to information. The downsides of greenwashing are higher, and you're actually seeing greenwashing itself diminish?
So greenwashing has not diminished, which is the counterintuitive thing, particularly coming out the other end of the pandemic. And I know we're still in a pandemic. The companies that are engaging in greenwashing are now doing it more frequently, but there's different types of greenwashing. So the ones that are doing it from a nefarious perspective, where they're building it into their marketing mix, that's diminishing. The companies that are doing it accidentally is increasing, because they're saying, oh, I need to get on this, let's call it a bandwagon of doing the right thing. So they're making simple mistakes. They're over-reporting. They're complicating their approaches. So that stuff we can fix. It's the nefarious stuff that is actually diminishing, which is a good thing, but we need to be pushing that a little bit harder.
Okay, so there is a trend when it comes to people. People in a way haven't changed, but the environment around us has.
And if you think about you talked about trends. If I had a crystal ball, I'd be extremely wealthy, but I don't. So if I looked in the future 15 years, the majority of products, if you go to the typical grocery store, down the shops on the high street, most things will be sustainable to some extent because the companies that aren't playing ball now will have gone the way of the dodos. So from a consumer perspective, the 90% of the work's already been done. All I need to do is just select a product. And we've seen that over the past 20 years if you look at things like organic foods or the access to things like Patagonias of the world, where it would have been cost prohibitive 20 years ago, but now because of scale, it still is expensive, sure, but you're paying for quality over quantity. And that same thing is happening across the board with all businesses. So it's still going to be up to the business to do the majority, the lion's share of the work, and the consumer is not going to change on a dime. And even for consumers today, as much as they hate to hear this, you need to do your research and you are going to have to spend a bit more. But 10 years from now, I don't think that's going to be as much the case.
Yeah.
Assuming we're still here in 10 years. We haven't blown ourselves up.
I give us at least 100.
Okay, that's fine.
I really do.
All my comments do not include the threat of nuclear annihilation. So I assume that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I assume people aren't that stupid. I assume no one's really literally going to pull the trigger. I know I might be overestimating. What do they say? The difference between genius and stupidity is genius has its limits. But assuming we're around for another 100 years, here's an example of what I think you're talking about. 15 years ago, I worked on a project at Nike called Considered. Considered is consider the planet, consider the environment, consider the ecological impacts. So Considered was their eco-friendly line of products. And one of the products they built, I don't have it with me, was a sneaker with zero glue. And so everything had to be either stitched or locked together somehow because glues were bad and sneaker glue is pretty toxic. So they did this experiment, but they made the sneaker look really funky. Like it really had a waffle bottom because the midsole and the outsole were waffled together. And then there was a big, huge, almost a shoelace that stitched the whole outsole to the upper around the thing. So it was obviously an eco shoe. Like it screamed eco in the same way that the first Prius and the Leaf, was it also the Honda Insight,
Oh, that's it.
and the Toyota Prius, those very first two popular, at least in the US, popular electric cars screamed eco-friendly and looked obviously different. And Nike said, look, what we hope is that in 20 years time or 15 years time, eco will just be built into every Nike Pegasus we sell at Dick's Sporting Goods. And you're saying, people won't have to look for the eco-friendly shoe. It'll just be built into the whole line.
And you won't even notice it, which is the good thing, right? Because nobody, especially today, if you look at the list of considerations, whether that's for purchase or voting or whatever it might be, sustainability or anything around that is right at the bottom of the list. So nobody at this stage of the game wants to be hit over the head with this has to be eco-friendly. I think it does need to be built in. And, as somebody in the field, I wouldn't want to wear a pair of, hideous-looking, screaming eco-friendly shoes and, drive a car that is a box just because it saves the environment a little bit. I want something that also gives me, what do we call it? Is it social cachet? I don't know, but something that doesn't ostracize me.
Well, there are those people who want the shoes that scream eco-friendly, but there are only 12 of them.
Yeah, and they're also the ones screaming from the top of an oil tank.
Yep, and they live in Berkeley, and they live in Boulder, right? And we know those people, but they're only the rest of the 12 million people who are going to buy sneakers this month or maybe this week want something that makes them look cool and fit in. And by the way, oh my gosh, 30% post-consumer, foam.
And there's no reason those two things can't coexist. It's just building them together.
Sure. When it does, there's that piece you just said that sustainability often comes at the bottom of the list. What I hear, I hear two things. What I hear from the people who survey consumers, especially survey young consumers, is that all that young consumers care about is the planet and sustainability and social justice. And they want to buy from people with values, buy from brands that have their same values. When I talk to retailers, they talk about velocity, which is to say how quickly do products leave the shelf. And they say the eco-friendly stuff has zero velocity or really low. No one's buying it. The Greenworks, Clorox Greenworks was a subline. I don't even know if it still exists. Let's see. Clorox Greenworks. It does still, maybe. I think it, I can't tell. I think it does still exist. But I remember they made a huge push because the consumer survey said people want to buy eco-friendly stuff. So Clorox put it all on the shelves. They had all their end caps and all their big displays. And from what I knew of, 6 months later, they were delisted everywhere because no one was buying this stuff.
I mean, think
Is
about it.
that similar to what you see or hear?
I take so much issue with surveys is because think about it. If somebody comes up to you, you're in a market research, especially in a group setting for market research, and they give you a survey that says, hey, do you care about the polar bears? Are you going to say no? No one in their right mind is going to say no. So, of course, the surveys say one thing, but then when it comes down to it, and you're given the choice between Clorox wipes that cost $2 a packet or the green line, which costs $15 a packet, which one are you going to... I'm going to pick the $2 one because it's just a wipe I'm going to throw out. So, especially in sustainability, market research surveys do not ever explain the reality of what the velocity will actually be. So they always need to be taken with a grain of salt. Yes, generally speaking, the trajectory is towards more sustainable goods and the consumers wanting this. Business, unfortunately, has not responded in the right way with given something that is equal to, not overpriced versus.
Yep. There are two little tidbits I always love to say when it comes to the science, the brand science, the marketing science, when it comes to understanding consumers. One is the say-do gap.
Yep, of course.
What we say versus what we do. And the other one, which I've written about elsewhere, is that the number one thing you learn when you do a survey is how people want to present themselves on a survey. And that's not always connected to what they really want, what they know, what they truly feel. It's how they want to present themselves.
Absolutely. I'm more curious about the 10% of people who say no, they don't care about the planet.
Who says
to them.
No?
Who's bold enough to do
bears.
that? Yeah. Talk to them and see where their heads are at.
I don't give a shit about the planet. I want a beer that just is good.
Is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the more honest
ones. I want
ones.
new virgin aluminum. I don't want that recycled shit. That is true. That would be funny. That would be really funny to find out like what makes those people tick and just why are they also in the minority?
From a marketing and brand building perspective, that 10% is actually the ones you want to target when you're thinking through a campaign, because if you can convert them, then you can convert anybody.
Well, that's true.
They're actually more important.
The other sneaky way around it is often to say, what would your friends do?
Sure.
You know, because if you say, would you buy an organic beer? People will be like, oh, like you said, sure, I'll pay 20 cents more for a can of organic beer. But if you say to people, or if you ask people, do you think most of your peers would pay 20 cents more for an organic beer? You're much more likely to get an honest answer of probably not.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. No, they'll go with the beer they like the most or the one that blah, blah, blah. It's cutest.
Surveys are only as good as the way they're formulated and worded.
There you go. Spoken like a true data geek. I love it. I love it. Well, John, where do people find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to my website, johnpabon.com or Pabon or however you want to pronounce it, .com. And then
that's JohnPabon.
Bingo. That's exactly right.
.com.
And I do a lot on TikTok. I don't do any dancing, but I do a lot of long-form explainers, which people have found refreshing. So I've managed to create myself as an influencer, which is fine, means to an end. I'm saving
Just
the planet.
call yourself a talking head. I'm a talking head.
I like that better. I'll do that.
Yeah, it's better. I'm a talking head, and I talk shit about greenwashing and sustainability.
Perfect.
Cool. Okay, so TikTok, johnpabon.com. The new book's coming out very soon. What's the new book called?
Strategic Sustainability, a Pragmatic Blueprint for Responsible Business. I really need to shorten those subtitles.
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe they should be longer. I don't know.
Yes.
It's hard to say. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll talk more soon.
Perfect.
That's it for this episode. If anything stuck with you from today's show, good. That's the point. Be simple, be sticky, and stay classy, San Diego. If today's conversation made you rethink something about your business, consider calling us to get more formal help for your brand or your team. I run workshops and strategy sessions to turn science into success. Cliche, that's cheesy. Learn more at appliedbrandscience.com.